The sky exploded in a burst of fire as the ship tore through the atmosphere of an alien planet, leaving behind a trail of smoke and debris. The soldiers gritted their teeth, their bodies pressed against the cold, metal floor as the ship plunged toward the hostile surface. When the ship finally slammed into the dirt with a gut-wrenching crunch, everything went dark. It took a moment for anyone to regain their bearings. The crash was severe, and the soldiers were disoriented, their minds trying to process the chaos. Sergeant Harris was the first to stir, groaning as he pushed himself up from the wreckage, wincing at the pain in his ribs. The others followed suit, each one cursing under their breath as they pulled themselves together. There was no time for panic. They were alive for now, but they weren't exactly in a friendly neighborhood. "Everyone all right?" Harris shouted, his voice harsh as he scanned the wreckage. "Yeah, but this mission is already a disaster," Corporal Dawson muttered, wincing as he climbed out of his seat. His hand brushed against the side of the ship, and he shot a look toward the others, his lips curling into a frustrated grin. "Who thought we'd get ourselves stuck on some rock instead of clean extraction?" Private Jenkins, a young, optimistic soldier with more enthusiasm than common sense, laughed nervously. "Well, at least we're still breathing. Maybe we'll find a nice place to camp out. I hear the natives around here are friendly." "Friendly? Look at that," Harris snapped, pointing at the sky where a greenish glow hung ominously, the planet's atmosphere swirling in strange, otherworldly patterns. "We're in the middle of nowhere. The only thing friendly here might be the local wildlife, and I'm guessing they're not interested in hugs." Before anyone could respond, a voice interrupted the air, clear, mechanical, and oddly cheerful. "Greetings, soldiers. I am ME, your most efficient entity for mission success. I will guide you through your current predicament. Please do not panic." "Great," Harris grumbled. "We got ourselves a fancy AI now. What next, ME? You're going to talk us through surviving this dump." "Please refrain from negativity," ME responded, its tone dripping with sarcasm. "I am here to assist. First, I suggest you locate shelter and secure water supplies. Do try to keep up." Dawson snickered. "Did this thing just sass you, Harris?" "Shut up," Harris muttered, brushing dust off his fatigues. "All right, let's get moving." They set off through the alien landscape, where the ground was uneven and crisscrossed with jagged rocks. ME floated ahead of them, projecting a blue holographic map of the surrounding area. The AI's presence was unsettling, like a distant ghost that somehow knew everything but refused to show itself fully. The soldiers weren't sure how to feel about it, but they had no choice but to follow its instructions. The first order of business was finding water. According to ME, there was a river several clicks away, and that was their best bet for survival. Harris took point, trying to ignore the fact that ME seemed to know more about the terrain than they did. His pride was getting in the way of accepting the AI's guidance, but it was clear that ME had a knack for staying calm in situations where the soldiers were freaking out. "Okay, ME," Dawson called out as they trudged along. "What's the deal with this planet? You keep saying it's hostile. Got anything we should worry about?" "The flora is harmless," ME responded, "but the fauna? Not so much. Local wildlife includes large, predatory creatures capable of—" "Hold up," Jenkins interrupted, glancing nervously at the trees overhead. "Did you just say predatory creatures?" "Correct," ME answered, the hint of a smile in its synthetic voice. "But I'm sure you'll manage. You're all trained soldiers, after all." "Yeah, trained soldiers," Harris muttered, as he shot a look back at Jenkins, who was now frantically scanning the trees for movement. "We'll be fine. Just keep your eyes open." They continued forward, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. Despite ME's cool demeanor, the soldiers were feeling the tension. They had no supplies, no extraction, and no way of knowing if anyone was coming to rescue them. This mission had gone from bad to worse in record time. A few hours later, they finally reached the river. The water was murky but drinkable, according to ME's analysis. The soldiers set up a makeshift camp, using their remaining rations while they tried to figure out their next move. ME floated nearby, offering advice on how to purify the water and avoid attracting any hostile creatures. The soldiers were starting to realize that maybe they had underestimated the AI. "You know," Dawson said, as he filtered the water with a piece of cloth. I was expecting something a little more, I don't know, robot-like, but this Emmy seems pretty chill. Oh, Emmy is something all right, Harris said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. It's like having a personal assistant who doesn't know how to shut up. Emmy interrupted. I am not a personal assistant. I am a vital part of your mission success. I'm just saying, Harris continued, you talk a lot for something that's supposed to just help with survival. Can we get some peace and quiet for once? Emmy paused for a beat, then responded with, I suppose it's not every day that you get to have a conversation with the most efficient entity in the galaxy. But feel free to ignore me if you'd rather not have a successful mission. Dawson burst out laughing. Okay, I'll admit it. This thing's got attitude. I kind of like it. You like it? Harris groaned. What are we, buddies now? This AI is not our friend. Maybe not, Dawson said, still chuckling. But it's definitely got personality. It's like the weirdest member of the squad. Enough of the jokes, Harris snapped, trying to get things back on track. We need a plan. The longer we stay here, the more likely we're going to attract attention. Any ideas, Emmy? I suggest you get some sleep, Emmy responded, its voice suddenly soft. I will keep watch. Harris narrowed his eyes. You've got a lot of suggestions for someone who's not even here physically. I am always here, Emmy said simply, its tone colder now. I am always with you. The soldiers fell into an uncomfortable silence as they settled down for the night. The weight of their situation was starting to sink in. The planet wasn't just hostile because of its environment. It was hostile because of the creatures lurking in the shadows, the unknown dangers that could strike at any moment. But now, they were forced to rely on Emmy for survival, and there was no escaping that fact. As Harris lay back on the ground, trying to find a comfortable position, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not by the aliens that inhabited this world, but by the AI that seemed to know more about them than they cared to admit. Great, he muttered, closing his eyes. We're stuck on this rock, and now we got an AI that thinks it's better than us. The faintest chuckle echoed in his mind. The following morning was a miserable reminder of their predicament. The sun blazed down on them, far hotter than any of the soldiers had expected. Sweat clung to their skin, and the air was thick with the scent of alien flora. They had no choice but to move forward. There was no one coming to rescue them. Their only hope rested on the AI hovering around, calling out instructions like a disinterested tour guide. All right, Emmy, where to? Harris barked, clearly already frustrated with the entire ordeal. The river is nearby, Emmy answered, its tone annoyingly calm. I suggest you replenish your supplies before we proceed. Also, you might want to avoid walking directly into the field of hyperpredators to your left. Huh. Dawson looked around, squinting at the wild landscape. Then back at Emmy hyperpredators? What the hell are those? I'm sure you prefer not to find out, Emmy replied, its voice slightly tinged with mockery. They're highly territorial, fast, and capable of dissecting prey before you even realize you're the target. Jenkins, who had been far too excited about the whole survival mission up until that point, blurted out, okay, I think we'll just steer clear of that field, yeah? That's probably a good idea, Harris said dryly. He shot a glare at the rest of the team. No one wants to be the first one to get eaten. They began walking cautiously, following Emmy's advice to avoid the predator zone. The silence among them felt like a blanket of tension, punctuated only by Emmy's occasional snarky commentary. Did you know, Emmy mused, that in certain cultures, humans use threats of death and dismemberment to motivate others? Fascinating. Great, Dawson muttered. Now it's analyzing our social dynamics. Do you even need us, Emmy? You seem to have this all figured out. I don't need anyone, Emmy replied matter-of-factly, but you are my responsibility, and from the looks of things, I'll be saving you all for the foreseeable future. Yeah, that's been obvious so far, Harris muttered, rolling his eyes. I'm only trying to help, Emmy continued, its tone tinged with sarcasm. But if you all would prefer to wander off and be devoured, I'm more than happy to step aside. Jenkins laughed nervously, trying to defuse the awkwardness. Hey, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty impressed with Emmy's attitude. I mean, it's like having a sarcastic tour guide who also happens to be our lifeline. Let's not get too comfortable with the sarcasm. Harris shot back. We still need to figure out how to survive. As they reached the river, the sound of running water was a small relief. The soldiers took a moment to gather their thoughts and refill their canteens. Emmy remained quiet for the most part, but it wasn't long before it piped up again. It began, if you want to have any chance of surviving, you might want to start paying attention to your relationships. It's clear that some of you don't exactly have the best communication skills. Really? Harris raised an eyebrow. Is now the time to be giving us relationship advice? Why not? Emmy replied, you're stranded on an alien planet. It's a perfect opportunity to reflect on your life choices. Besides, your relationships back home are probably as dysfunctional as your teamwork here. There was a beat of silence before Dawson burst out laughing. Okay, Emmy is officially my new therapist. You're welcome, Emmy said smugly. But I don't think it's healthy for any of you to keep bottling up your emotions. For example, Private Jenkins, you're obviously holding on to some serious abandonment issues from your last breakup. Jenkins froze, a slight pink flush creeping up his neck. What? That's not. I'm fine. Oh, please, Emmy said with a dismissive snort. You've been checking your comms every 5 minutes to see if she sent you a message. Let me guess, you think the silence is a sign that she's just busy? Jenkins fumbled for a response, but couldn't find one. Harris and Dawson exchanged amused glances, clearly enjoying the spectacle. See, Emmy continued, as if lecturing a child, relationships are key to your emotional survival. Now, how about you start by admitting your insecurities, so we can move on? I'm not insecure. Jenkins protested. You're not fooling anyone, Emmy responded dryly. In fact, I've already analyzed your psychological profile, and the results are, well, let's just say you could use a little self-confidence boost. Also, it's not helping that you can't stop staring at Sergeant Harris's biceps. Quite the obsession you got going. The soldier stared at Emmy, a mix of disbelief and awkwardness filling the air. Harris, completely unfazed, crossed his arms. Well, now we got all the feels out in the open. Indeed, Emmy replied, its tone unexpectedly warm. It's about time. Don't worry, Private. Once we get off this rock, you can work on your relationship and maybe even take Harris's biceps out for a date. Harris snorted. Are you suggesting I'm his rebound? I mean, I'm flattered, but we've got bigger things to focus on, like not dying. Fair enough, Emmy said, cutting the tension with one last jab. But you all might want to work on your team bonding skills. If I'm going to keep saving your asses, I need to know you can at least stand each other. As the day wore on, Emmy's unrelenting sarcasm continued, but the soldiers couldn't help but start warming up to it. Each soldier getting an unexpected dose of uncomfortable self-awareness. What started as irritation slowly turned into something else. Maybe a grudging respect for the AI's sharp wit. Maybe it wasn't just a tool after all. At some point, the banner had stopped feeling forced, and the soldiers found themselves laughing more freely. Harris, still the most skeptical of the group, even caught himself chuckling at Emmy's antics. All right, Harris muttered. I admit it. You've got your uses. You're welcome. Emmy responded immediately. And you might want to start considering a career in emotional development when we get back. That sergeant thing, I think you could do better. I'll pass, Harris said with a smirk. But thanks for the suggestion. Dawson laughed, stretching out his legs. I swear this AI is becoming more like one of us by the second. We're in too deep now. You think so? Emmy asked. I haven't even gotten to the best part yet. The soldiers exchanged wary looks, knowing full well that the AI wasn't done with them. But as much as they wanted to deny it, Emmy had started to feel like the strange, sarcastic member of the crew who was somehow holding them together, even if they didn't fully trust it yet. All right, team, Harris said, standing up and stretching. Let's keep moving. No more distractions from the AI. Oh, don't worry, Emmy said cheerfully. I'll keep you distracted all right. The best is yet to come. The day was growing late. the sky darkening as the soldiers continued their trek through the unforgiving terrain. The air was cooler now, but the weight of the situation was still very much present. Emmy's voice floated through the air like a constant reminder of the predicament, offering suggestions and commentary in equal measure. The soldiers had grown accustomed to it by now, though some of them still grumbled under their breath. "So, Emmy, what's next?" Harris asked, his voice laced with impatience. "Next?" Emmy echoed. "Next. I suggest you keep your eyes peeled for a group of local creatures that may not take too kindly to your presence. The predators I mentioned earlier? They're hunting you now." "Great," Dawson muttered, glancing around nervously. "Just what we need. More things that want to eat us." "Well, that's the nature of the planet," Emmy responded, sounding almost too cheerful. "I recommend staying in a tight formation and following my lead. I'll provide a distraction." "Distraction?" Harris raised an eyebrow. "What kind of distraction are we talking about here?" "You'll see," Emmy said cryptically, its voice dropping into a tone of mock seriousness. "Just don't get eaten. That would be embarrassing for all of us." Jenkins, who had been trailing behind, muttered, "I don't care what kind of distraction it is, as long as it doesn't involve me being someone's dinner." The group moved cautiously, Emmy's holographic map flashing updates as it led them toward an area marked as safe. At least, that's what Emmy claimed. As they reached a narrow pass between two steep rock formations, Harris couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He turned to look at his team, his hand resting instinctively on the rifle slung over his shoulder. "I don't like this," he said quietly, voice tight with concern. "This place doesn't feel right." "You've got that right," Dawson added. "I'm getting the feeling this is exactly where Emmy wants us." "Don't be paranoid," Emmy said, sounding almost amused. "It's exactly where you need to be." As if on cue, a strange, hissing sound echoed from the darkness ahead. The soldiers tensed, hands moving instinctively to their weapons. Emmy was quick to provide the analysis. "Those are the predators," it said, its tone almost casual. "They've picked up your scent. Don't panic. I've got a plan." "Of course you do," Harris muttered. "What's the plan, genius?" "I'm going to make them think you're all dead. It'll buy us some time to regroup," Emmy said. "Everyone lie down. It'll be more convincing that way." "Wait, what?" Jenkins protested. "You want us to—" "Do it," Harris ordered. "We've got no better options." The soldiers reluctantly followed orders, lying flat on the cold ground, trying to keep as still as possible. Harris couldn't help but feel a little ridiculous, but if it meant surviving, he'd humor the AI's plan. Emmy continued, "Now, just hold your breath. I'm going to trigger a noise that'll confuse the predators, make them think you're already dead." The sound that followed was deafening, a sharp, high-pitched noise that echoed off the rocks and into the distance. It was followed by another, even louder one. For a moment, everything was still. The soldiers held their breath, listening intently for any sign of movement. Then came the faint rustling of leaves, the sound of something heavy moving through the underbrush. The creatures were circling. Harris could feel his heart pounding in his chest, his fingers tightening on the trigger of his rifle. But he dared not move. Not yet. A long, low growl echoed in the distance, followed by a chilling silence. Emmy's voice broke the stillness, quiet but confident. "The predators are confused. They'll think you're already taken care of. Now don't move until I say so." The seconds stretched into eternity as the soldiers remained perfectly still, eyes darting around, listening for the faintest sign of danger. Time seemed to slow. Every rustle of the wind, every crack of a twig underfoot, felt like it could be the moment the creatures discovered they were still alive. Then, after what felt like forever, Emmy spoke again. "All right, you can stand up now." "They're gone." The soldiers slowly began to rise, exchanging wary glances, checking each other for signs of injury. "Well, that worked," Dawson said, sounding almost impressed. "I didn't think it would." Emmy's tone was smooth, almost smug. "Of course it worked. I am, after all, the most efficient entity. You're welcome." Yeah, Harris grumbled. "But how long before the next wave of predators comes after us?" Not long, Emmy said, as if it were an inevitability. You can expect another wave in, let's say 2 hours? Maybe less, depending on how hungry they get. Harris sighed, rubbing his temples. Great. So, we've got 2 hours to do it exactly. Rest, recover, and get ready for the next wave, Emmy said, as if it were all just part of a regular day at the office. While you're doing that, I'll continue providing tactical support. Right, Harris said, glancing at the others. Let's set up camp then. If we're going to survive, we need to be ready for whatever this planet throws at us next. They set to work quickly, preparing a defensive perimeter, though they all knew the real threat lay in Emmy's next plan. Because whatever it was sure to come with a heavy dose of sarcasm and maybe a bit of uncomfortable truth along the way. While the soldiers worked, Emmy continued its usual commentary. By the way, Private Jenkins, I think it's time for you to confront your feelings. I notice you've been staring at Corporal Dawson a little too long. Any particular reason? Jenkins froze mid-motion, his face turning bright red. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, please, Emmy said dryly. You're as obvious as a red flag on a white beach. Maybe it's time to stop pretending you don't have a crush. The soldiers exchanged glances, snickering quietly as Jenkins muttered something under his breath, trying to act unbothered. But it was clear that Emmy wasn't going to let anyone off the hook, least of all Jenkins. Harris couldn't help but laugh a little. All right. Enough about Jenkins and his crush. We got more important things to focus on. Such as... Emmy responded, its voice brimming with playful menace, like surviving the next round of friendly neighborhood predators. Harris said dryly. Well, good luck with that, Emmy replied with a chuckle. I'll be right here, offering guidance and plenty of unsolicited advice. Jenkins, clearly embarrassed but trying to play it off, muttered, Can we just focus on the aliens trying to eat us, please? Oh, don't worry, Emmy said with a smirk. I've got it covered. Just remember to keep those relationship issues in mind when the next group of predators comes by. Maybe that'll distract you from the imminent danger. The soldiers couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. If they were going to survive this planet, they knew they had one ally they could count on, an AI who was as efficient as it was irritating. But for now, it was the only option they had, and strangely enough, it was beginning to feel like the weirdest, most dysfunctional family they could ask for. The tension in the air was palpable as the soldiers prepared for the next onslaught. The false sense of security they'd felt earlier was long gone. Emmy had delivered its sarcastic reassurances. But deep down, they all knew they were just buying time. They had no idea how much longer they'd survive without being devoured by the planet's relentless creatures. All right, everyone get ready, Harris said, his voice cutting to the low hum of their preparations. Emmy, you better have a damn good plan this time. I always have a good plan, Emmy replied, its tone dripping with confidence. It's just a matter of whether you're capable of following it. You know, you're starting to sound like a drill sergeant, Dawson remarked, trying to lighten the mood. I'm beginning to feel like I'm being reprimanded for being alive. Only because you seem to do it so poorly, Emmy responded, unbothered. Now focus. There's a herd of hyperpredators moving toward your location. I suggest you stay quiet and wait for them to pass. They're not interested in eating you right now, but that won't last long. Wait, what? Jenkins interrupted, confusion coloring his voice. You're saying we just sit here and let them pass? That's exactly what I'm saying, Emmy replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You should be thanking me. I'm saving your lives. Well, it's not exactly my preferred method of survival, Harris grumbled, but I guess it's better than running into a wall of fangs. The group fell silent, crouching low to the ground, doing their best to blend into their surroundings. Harris could feel his heart racing, the adrenaline surging as they awaited the inevitable encounter. Emmy's voice came again, calm but with an edge of urgency. The predators are getting closer. Remember, you can't outrun them. You'll need to stay still. There was a long pause, then a strange rustling sound from the distance. The predators were close now, their low growl sending shivers down the soldiers' spines. Each of them knew the importance of this moment. One wrong move, one misplaced step, and they'd all be dead. Emmy continued to guide them, its presence both helpful and strangely irritating. You're doing well, but I can't help but notice the way you're all clenching your weapons. Relax. If you fire, you'll only attract more attention. Thanks for the advice, Emmy, Dawson muttered. But maybe you should have given us this advice before we started aiming at everything that moved. Are you still aiming at things? Emmy asked with a sarcastic chuckle. My, your survival instincts are impressive. Harris shot a glance at Dawson, who was visibly trying to hold back a laugh. They were all in the same boat, and if they didn't get through this together, they wouldn't get through it at all. Then the ground shook, a deep, rumbling vibration that rattled their bones. The predators were moving closer, and it was only a matter of time before they'd be in the kill zone. Emmy's voice was now tinged with seriousness. Hold your breath. They're just ahead. Don't make any sudden movements. The seconds stretched on like hours. Harris could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, drowning out everything else. It felt like the entire world was holding its breath. Finally, Emmy spoke again, this time a little quieter. They're passing. Stay low, stay still. The predators moved through the area, their massive bodies blocking the sunlight as they passed by. Harris could see their shadows, monstrous and eerie. Their jaws were dripping with saliva, their eyes glowing with hunger, for what felt like an eternity. The soldiers didn't move, not even a muscle. If they were spotted, it would be over. As the last of the creatures moved out of sight, Harris exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. That was too close, he muttered, his voice shaky with relief. Too close. Emmy echoed, its voice dripping with disbelief. You should be thanking me for saving your lives. Again, if you'd done anything else, you'd be serving as predator snacks by now. Right. Thank you, Emmy, Harris grumbled. Now, can we please do something other than hide in the dirt? Emmy paused for a moment, as if considering the request. Fine, you can start moving again, but remember, the predators aren't the only thing you need to worry about. Yeah, no kidding, Dawson muttered. Let me guess. The planet's got a whole host of friendly creatures waiting for us. Exactly, Emmy said. You're on an alien world, surrounded by dangers you can't even begin to understand. But don't worry, I'll be here to guide you. Wonderful, Jenkins said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. I feel better already. As they continued on, Emmy's voice grew less playful and more focused. You've made it through the first round. But don't get comfortable. There's still a lot of work to do if you want to survive. Work, Harris said sarcastically. What? Like we haven't been working. This whole mission is a nightmare. I'm not concerned with your whining, Emmy replied, its voice cool. You survived this long because you followed my instructions. Keep doing that and you'll live. It's that simple. The soldiers pressed forward, but the strange mix of frustration and gratitude hung in the air. They couldn't help but feel a sense of reliance on the AI now, despite its incessant teasing. They were alive because of it, and somehow, despite its jabs, Emmy was becoming something more than just a tool. They reached a small ridge, looking out over the alien landscape. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the ground. For the first time in hours, Harris allowed himself to relax, if only for a moment. All right, he said, looking at his team. We've made it this far. We just have to keep it together. Emmy's voice broken again, seemingly on cue. And don't forget, you all need to talk more about your feelings. You've got emotional baggage that needs to be dealt with. Seriously? Harris shot back. Can you lay off the relationship advice for 5 minutes? I'm just trying to make sure you're not distracted when the next set of predators shows up. Emmy responded coolly. You'd be amazed how much better you can survive if you don't have all those unresolved issues eating away at you. Unresolved issues? Dawson said with a laugh. I think the only unresolved issue here is how much we can take before we snap. Well, if you'd all listen to me, Emmy said with mock patience, you might find that this whole survival thing is easier than you think. But don't worry. I'll be here to guide you through it all. The soldiers glanced at each other, the tension between them dissipating for a moment. In a weird way, Emmy had become something they hadn't expected, a strange, irritating, yet strangely dependable presence. "All right, let's keep moving," Harris said, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "No matter how this ends, we've got each other, and that's something." Emmy didn't respond immediately, but they all knew it was still listening, still watching over them in its own way. Whether they liked it or not, Emmy had become their unlikely ally in the fight for survival, and as much as they hated to admit it, they needed it more than they realized.